Hi, and welcome to Feeling Beings Who Think. Happy New Year. I am delighted to kick off the 2026 new year with you. And of course, I am delighted you are here for this solo episode where I would like to reflect on my conversation with executive leadership and team coach, Judy Wolfe, that I shared last week. But first, I want to share with you, especially if you are listening to this in real time, 2 retreat opportunities. I will be working with the Diocese of Newark to lead their upcoming retreat for laity and the clergy retreat that they do every year. The lay retreat is called Do Not Fear, God Abides in You, and it is February 27th and 28th. And the clergy retreat is the next month in March, Where Our Joy is Found, an embodied exploration of spiritual resilience. That will be March 10th through 12th, 2026. And you can go to the show notes of this episode to connect with the Diocese of Newark and find out all the details. All right. So in my last conversation, I spoke, as I said, with Judy Wolfe, who specializes in team coaching. And what I want to do in this episode is go through a discipline that she shared, a framework she shared in our conversation that I think is going to be really helpful and applicable and resonant for those of you in churches and leading nonprofits. Because, as I've said many times before, people in nonprofit work, especially in faith-based communities, you have one very particular factor in your leadership work that is unlike the corporate for-profit world. And that is you must work with volunteers. This creates a very unique human dynamic because in nonprofit settings, and particularly in churches, you're not only responsible for the overall health and well-being of the organization, and in a church, the health and well-being of the spirituality of the people in that organization, you are also accountable to those same people. And your board or vestry, not only do they hold fiduciary responsibility that you also share with them, but most of the time, they also have operational responsibility for what happens day to day. And that dynamic, that both and of both leading and serving, that really impacts the implicit ways, sometimes explicit, but the implicit ways the system operates. As well, your board or vestry most likely, hopefully, is made up of people from all different backgrounds, people who represent the variety of backgrounds in your community and in your pews or in the people that you serve. They bring all different types of professional, social work, teaching work, organizational work, caregiving. Maybe they haven't worked in the for-profit workforce at all. But all of these different backgrounds and experiences, the way in which they think of working together, the way in which they view your work, they're going to be very personal based on that experience and probably look different. And this is great, right? Because we are supposed to be a part of the larger human community, but it's also where things get complicated. So the bottom line of this episode is that working with volunteers is its own unique leadership skill. And this framework, I think, is particularly useful for those of us who have to do that. Bottom line, working with volunteers is its own leadership skill. Not only are they holding the big picture and the mission of the organization, but they're also responsible for the budget. They're also responsible for the day-to-day, sometimes for things like organizing events, leading a pledge drive or capital campaign, overseeing maybe some sort of regular programming, maybe even helping you in staff management. So you can get really into the weeds, and this can lead to frustration in the way that people work together. It can also lead to some pretty unproductive meetings, or it can lead, if you're the priest in charge or executive director, to you over-functioning because instead of dealing with the complicated human dynamics, you'd rather just do the work yourself and get it done. And we all know where that inevitably leads to burnout and fatigue. Anyway, so when I was working for almost 20 years full-time in the church, I never heard the term team coaching. And I think it's a really helpful lens for those of us who lead in this complex set of relationships. Because if you utilize that lens, you can understand that as the leader, you are also the team coach, and you can take real ownership in the way in which your team functions well. Now, a team coach will at times bring in a facilitator. And personally, I cannot say enough about the value of doing that because it allows you as the leader to participate more so than hold all the responsibility for the day and the outcomes of the retreat. Either way, this framework, you could use this with a facilitator to design a professional development day or retreat experience. Or if you have to be the facilitator, you can utilize this for what I think would be a really productive use of your time together. So the 5-discipline framework that Judy brought into our conversation was developed by Peter Hawkins, and it's known as the 5 disciplines of highly effective teams. Let's talk through it. Number 1, the first discipline is commission. Commission invites you to ask as a team, are we clear about what is expected of us? Not only are you clear on your definition of the big picture, but have you taken into account the ecosystem that places responsibilities on you that you may or may not have chosen? If you're in a faith community, for example, you're connected to all the people within that community, but also the people in the community in which you're situated, the parish. You're also connected with your diocese. That diocese is connected to a denominational institution. That's connected most likely to a wider church. And most importantly, again, especially in churches, you are responsible to people who don't even, some would say darken your doors, but others would say be active members of your community. So when you do that first discipline, commissioning, what is being asked of us now by the larger ecosystem that we serve? Number 2, clarity. Clarity is kindness. There's no real accountability on a team. If you discover your why, then you have to decide what. That's what the clarity question does. Are you specific about what success looks like? Are you specific as to what goals you are trying together to achieve? Because unless you have metrics and benchmarks, you can't hold people accountable. What is it that you seek to do now that you understand who and why you exist in the world? Number 3, co-creation. Commissioning is about why, clarifying is about what, co-creation is about how. One of the phrases I use all the time with nonprofits and that I loved using every year with my vestry was, how we do what we do often matters more than what we do, what we accomplish. How our behaviors, how we behave together in relationship, how we communicate, how we make sure everybody understands it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to make mistakes, how we hold difficult conversations or conversations around sensitive topics, how we do what we do matters. And it matters every time your board is coming together for the first time. Number 4, connecting. Let's face it, the real work of nonprofit leadership doesn't happen at the board meeting or the vestry meeting. It happens outside the meeting, in the coffees and the lunches and the one-on-one conversations, the committees. So when your board members are in that larger ecosystem, do they know and can they represent your why? And have they shared the what? Are they connected at all times to the team and the larger purpose when they are interfacing with the ecosystem that you serve? And I have to say, if you're the nonprofit leader, I think that this responsibility of ensuring connection falls on you. Because in this volunteer dynamic, most often you're the one who's the paid staff member, and you have to utilize your volunteers, but they're volunteering. So it's up to you to provide them with what they need to stay connected. Maybe that's the best ways to communicate. Maybe that's, well, always it's maintaining a high relational engagement with them, understanding how they work, understanding what they need in their role. Sometimes it can be hard because it can feel like you spend all your time connecting with those relationships to support them. And I think sometimes we have to prioritize that relational engagement over efficiency and just doing something ourselves, right? We're trying to empower our volunteers. So that connecting piece is important. And the last one, the fifth, final discipline is learning. How are you growing together? How are you making time to reflect on what you've accomplished, give thanks for it, celebrate achievements, and also learn from your experiences, whether they went the way you hoped or not? Onboarding. I would say onboarding is one of the most crucial times when you can employ this discipline. It's a great time to remind the team of the historical narrative, the stories that you carry forward with you. Again, this can sometimes feel frustrating because if you're the person in charge, you always know the full story, but the new people won't. And being with them as they learn it, that's great because you're going to get some insights into it that you didn't know because they are new. They are seeing things and interpreting things in a new way. So the learning piece, that's a real big part of that annual work that I hope you are doing with your board or vestry on retreat. So the 5 disciplines are commission, clarify, co-creation, connecting, and learning. And lastly, here's my encouragement. As you think about your next vestry or board retreat, consider using this framework. You don't even have to use all of them. I personally think if you use the first 2, commission and clarify, that gives you as the leader something specific to work with when you start helping them shape the co-creation and the how, that transformative piece. When you use a framework like this, you are effectively coaching your team, even if that's not a term you want to use. All right. Thanks for listening to this. I hope this was useful for you and something you can take away and apply immediately. Of course, if you want to talk about this in your specific context with me, please reach out. You can connect at ariannerice.com. All right. Happy New Year. I hope it's a great one for you. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for taking a moment and rating and reviewing this episode. And I look forward to sharing my next conversation.